Hey, everybody. Welcome to my Facebook, not my Facebook, my YouTube channel. Hey, everybody. Welcome. I'm so excited that you're here. Listen, I need you to do me a favor. Go back to Facebook, go to Instagram, and tell folks to come on over so that we can talk. Turn my music down just a little bit. All right, so I see some folks have joined already. I'm so excited about tonight. I'm so excited. I never go live on my YouTube channel, but tonight is going to be something different. I'm excited because God placed this idea in my spirit really a while ago, and tonight is the fruition of just the first steps of what we're going to be doing. For those of you all who are joining now or will watch the replay later, my name is Dr. Matisa Wilbin, and I am a DisruptHer. Let me say that again. As you can see behind me, my name is Dr. Matisa Wilbin, and I am a disruptor. I'm excited because, as I said, God gave me this idea really a year or so ago, this whole idea of being a disruptor. And I sat on it for just a little while. I'm going to talk about what disruptors are in just a second, but I'm hopeful that everybody found this place okay. Hey, Joanna, listen, if I know nobody else is going to be here, I know Joanna is going to be here. Thank you so much for joining me. For those of you all who will come, I'm excited just to chat with you. Hey, Melissa, yes, glad to see you. Listen, do me a favor, go tell somebody else to get over here. Usually we make it really easy and just have everybody get on Facebook, but I'm doing something different on YouTube. Matter of fact, I'm going to go right now and tell everybody to join. And if you wouldn't mind, I need you to do the same thing. We're going to have some great conversation. Hey, Regina, good to see you. Hey, Shaquavia, good to see you as well. Listen, go on over and tell somebody to get over to Dr. Matisa's page. This is going to be the new home for motivation, inspiration, teachings, and that all starts tonight. So I'm super excited about it. This is my first opportunity to do this. And of course, y'all know I'm online all the time, but I never use this platform. So I'm just going to wait just a couple of minutes, but I just want to make sure that everybody's sharing. So please do what I'm doing. Take your phone out and share. Take your phone out and share. All right. So I see some folks are already watching. I'm going to share to my Facebook page now, and then we're going to get started. All right. All right. Join me. All right, I just shared. Hopefully you did too. Okay, so again, this is going to be different. Usually there are lots and lots of people on Facebook, but that's okay. I want to do this teaching because it's just in my heart to do. And whether people watch now or they watch the replay, I know it's going to bless them all the same. So let me tell you a little bit very quickly about this whole idea of being a disruptor and what it all means. So from, many of you all know me or are getting to know me. I have had the great privilege of doing a lot of things from the time that I was young up through now, a lot of opportunities. Thank you so much for sharing. Shaquavia, Regina, can you share? Joanna, share. Melissa, share for me. Get some people over here. The people who are normally on, I need you to get them, tell them to get over to YouTube. But at any rate, I had the opportunity, like some of you probably watching, to do things really early in life. Leadership came early, and to some degree, it came easy. But leadership never comes without a price. So I found myself very young, working towards, these higher degrees, being in positions where I realized everybody wasn't as happy for me to be there as I was. Now, I can't tell you, hey, Kiana, good to see you. Good to see you. Now they're coming over. Okay, go ahead and share, get some more people in here. But I decided very early on that I wanted to pursue a PhD. That was unheard of in my circles. Nobody that I knew had really even gone to college. I was a first generation college student. I certainly didn't know anybody who had received anything higher than a bachelor's degree that I remembered. But for whatever reason, God put it in my spirit to go on to get the PhD. And I knew I wanted to teach at a college level. And what I found, family, is as a young woman who was African American, like I said before, everybody wasn't as happy for me to be there as I was to be there. I found myself in positions and that's across the board, whether it was in church, whether it was within the school system, in academia, or in other places. Hi, Quenisha, good to see you. But no matter what position I was in, or no matter what institution I should say I was in, I found opposition. And if if that's any of you all, do me a favor and just put in the comments that you understand, or put in the comments that maybe you've been in some similar situations. I found myself, as I said, early on, getting a master's degree, getting a PhD, being one of the youngest ones, being the only person of color, and being one of a few females. And I always found myself, again, being one of the only ones. Now, I felt that like that was a call. I went to a predominantly white institution for undergrad. I was one of the only ones in graduate school. And I made a decision early on that when I taught, I wanted to teach in a predominantly white institution, because when students walked in their classrooms, I wanted them to see somebody who looked like them, because I never had that opportunity, really, for the most part, all through college. And so I wanted college students to see that there were some faculty members. Listen, some faculty members. Kiana, I see you. Always had to explain yourself. Yep. Always had to explain myself. Or people, they wouldn't always say something outright, but you could just feel. You could feel the way they felt about you, right? Or comments would be made that were sly, that were kind of backhanded, but you knew. So I'm going somewhere with this. Shagwavia, you said you're learning. Listen, it's something. And I kept asking God, and I'll say this, even in the church. I mean, I started preaching when I was young. I started in leadership in the church when I was really young. So it wasn't just about being Black. It wasn't just about being educated, but it was in the church as well. There were people in the church who didn't necessarily like a young woman who was in leadership over them. And so Joanna says, I experienced opposition for my stance on being integral at work. Absolutely. People will look at you crazy. They want you to act a certain way. And when you don't fit their mold, and that's going to lead us into our conversation, when you don't fit their mold, then they can try to ice you out, right? When you're different, you don't look like certain people or act a certain way, they can try to do things that will hinder your progression. And at one point I was asking God, I was like, God, why is it that you're always putting me in these situations? Men who don't like me preaching as a woman, older people who don't like me because I'm, younger and I'm over them in some way, people who are in the majority culture who don't like me because I'm Black, people who, are educated and cultured and have all of these, wonderful histories. And I came from a really teeny tiny town in Kentucky. And even though I got to have a lot of experiences because of academics, et cetera, it still felt like I was always the underdog. And sometimes all of these things would intersect. It is what we call it in sociology. It's called intersectionality. So the point that I want to make is you think that you're better. Yeah, that's how people would act towards me. And so I would ask God, I was like, God, why do you put me in these situations? And this is what he told me in so many words. And it wasn't solidified until it came till I got older. He basically said, you're a disruptor. That's it in a nutshell. He said, I put you in systems to change them, not to change experiences, not to change people, because people come and go. And I want to speak that over somebody who's watching or will watch. The reason you're often the only voice at the table is because God is setting you up to change systems. Okay. It's not, again, about just changing a situation. When I taught at my last institution, it was a predominantly white institution. So essentially that means the majority of students were white, the majority of faculty members were white. it was not uncommon at all that I would be the only person at the table who was a person of color. It wouldn't be anything at all for me to walk into a classroom, no matter what I was talking about, and be the only person of color there. But God told me that if I put you at the table, I need you to shift it. You're not there because you're the best. You're not there because you're the brightest. You're there because I've favored you and I've given you access to change things. So when I look back on my time at the university, I found myself being a DisruptHer. I used my voice loud and clear to change systems. We got students on that campus who probably wouldn't have had a chance had I not been advocating for them. There were women who got positions because I was at the table, and I didn't care if I was the only one. And I don't just mean the only person of color, the only woman, the only young person. I mean, if I was the only one speaking up for change, I decided to do it. And so God basically, he gave me this vision, this idea. And he said, there are a lot of women in particular. And if this is you, I want you to just type something on the screen, because I know I'm not alone. He said, I want you to create a network of women who have a voice and they know that voice very well and they use it every day. I want you to find women who don't know they have a voice, who don't think that they're making a difference anywhere. Maybe their mom's at home, and because they're not working outside of the house, they don't feel like their voice is being heard. Perhaps they're in positions of power, but their voice can't be used because people are trying to stop them. He told me to create a network of women in particular called DisruptHers, and we're going to join together to change some systems. All right. Now, this is the kickoff teaching. I'm going to do a 2-part series of teachings on DisruptHers. And I don't care if there was just one person, because I knew Shaquavi was going to be here. If there was just one person here, I'm fine with that, because we're going to build something. I want every single person, Joanna, Kiana, who else? Melissa, Quanisha, Regina, every single one of you, Shaquavia, has something on the inside of you that God wants to use to disrupt the status quo. He wants you to create such an earthquake, such a resistance to move and shift wherever you are, so that you're making the way for somebody else. All right. I have a daughter who is 10 years old. And I dare say by the time she gets my age and she's in the workforce, she's going to have much more opportunities, because I'm going to disrupt some things. Now, I'll tell you, disruption is not comfortable. All right. I will tell you that disruption costs. Sometimes disruption costs friends. Hey, Adelia, good to see you. Sometimes disruptions cost friends, friendships. Sometimes people will unfairly and label you because they don't understand what you're trying to do, right? And I need y'all to do what Shaquavi did. I love this. Just type on the screen, I am a DisruptHer. I am a DisruptHer. Now, that doesn't mean, of course, that there's anything that's done unseemly or anything that's done outside of character, all right? But what it does mean is you are purpose-filled and purposeful. Hear me, Melissa. Hear me, Adelia. Wherever you are, God is challenging us to shift some things. And this is what I believe. I believe that we're better together, okay? Because what I also know for sure is, and I see you, Adelia, that's been my story, totally misunderstood. What I know for sure is the enemy, because of what society says, creates this system. Quanisha said, I am a DisruptHer. Thank you. Melissa says, I am a DisruptHer. Society creates this system where women in particular are pitted against one another. Hear me, all right? Because I want you to hear my heart. And I believe this is from God. I want to free some of us tonight. Some of us have been the ones who have said, I don't have relationships with women. And if this is you, I want you to comment. I've heard so many women say, Well, I am not going to have relationships with women because they're too catty. I don't really get along with women. I only get along with men. Has that been anybody on this timeline or on this YouTube live? That's true for many of us. Why? Because the enemy creates this system that tries to pit us against one another. And that's what I want to talk about right now when we talk about this idea, right? When we talk about this idea of being a mean girl, because I believe that's a trick of the enemy. I believe it's something that the enemy creates, a system that he creates so that we can't get together. Because listen, y'all know when women get together, it's something else. When we get together, we disrupt and dismantle. And that's what this is about. Okay. So thank you all for joining me tonight on this kickoff teaching, on this inaugural send off of this amazing network. I'm going to tell you more about being a part of it and what all of that means. But I just want you to know you've got a sister who's out there, and we're about to join forces to put the enemy on the run. We're about to join forces to put the enemy on the run. All right. So let's get into our teaching. I don't want to keep us all night. And you can still share. If you've not shared, share this live right now. It's only going to grow. I believe that with everything in me. But thank you all for believing in me, for believing in the God in me, and being here as I teach tonight. So love all of you. So let's get into this teaching. This is going to be a two-part series. Again, it's on the series is called DisruptHers. And again, you are all disruptors. I want you to get that in your spirit. If you all have seen the movie Mean Girls, if you've seen the movie Mean Girls, if you could just, proverbially raise your hand by putting it in the comments, just say, I've seen it, or you can put the emoji of the girl raising her hands. Mean Girls is one of my favorite movies. By training, I'm a sociologist, for those of you all who do not know. So basically that means that sociologists study human nature in the context of society. So I like to know what makes people tick in terms of how they were raised and, the people that they know and their family and all of those kinds of things. I study human behavior. And so the reason why I love this particular movie, really I love all movies because I can get something out of all of them. Thank you, Adelia. Thank you so much. But this particular movie, Mean Girls, is kind of near and dear to my heart because I was somebody when I was younger. Shaquavia said, I watched that movie every day after school in 6th or 7th grade. That's hilarious. Well, I'm going to get to that because my daughter now watches it, Taya. And so that's one of the reasons why this was resurrected in my mind. But when I first saw the movie, it really hit home for me because I know what it's like, especially as a young girl, to want to be part of a certain clique and not be invited to do so. Right? I can absolutely say, and maybe that's some of your stories, and I'll just submit, we've all been part of cliques, whether we knew it or not. But I was that girl who was a little chubbier than everybody else. Okay. Because again, I was part of a predominantly white school. So even then body type, it was different. I was academically that person who did well in school, but I wasn't the pretty girl. I wasn't the cheerleader. I was in the band. Even though the band in my school was connected with people who were supposed to be smart, it was still kind of a nerdy kind of thing. And, I had a great high school. I wasn't bullied, anything like that. But I do remember wanting to be part of the cliques with the boyfriends and wanting to be part of the cliques where people thought I was pretty, right? Now, y'all don't leave me out there because I know some of you all were probably in that same vein, right? Whether you were part of the pretty clique and you knew it, or you weren't and you wanted to be. So when I watched this movie, Mean Girls, years ago, it really spoke to me. And I thought about it in terms of my baby sister, who at that time was kind of going through the middle school stage of wanting to be in certain cliques or whatever. And I started researching, the background, where the movie came from. And then in 2016, God led me to do a teaching at my church for my women's group called Mean Girls. Because the reality is that Mean Girl syndrome is not just for high school students, right? Let me say that again. Amen, lights. Amen, lights. That we teach that Mean Girls and cliques, particularly among women or girls, that it dies in high school. Well, can I just submit to somebody who is watching right now? The reality is, in our adulthood, there still is a system that if we don't disrupt, will create division, particularly among women, to keep us separate. I've recognized it even as an adult. Because what society does is society likes to put us in these categories, right? And even, now, especially with social media, especially with, all of these visual opportunities to see people, there's still divisions across beauty lines, across fashion lines, right? Across different categories. Yeah, seen it. Excuse me. Adelia said, I've seen it at church, seen it at work, seen it in my sorority. Absolutely. It crosses institutional lines because I believe society sets us up that way, unfortunately. And often, instead of dismantling it, we buy into it. And I'll be the first to say, I've bought into that before. I felt bad about myself because I didn't think I fit in a particular clique. I've let it impact my self-esteem because I didn't think that I fit within a particular clique. So Mean Girls, for those of you all who are parents, this might be of interest to you. It's actually based in a book. Joanna, absolutely mean boys as well. I want to talk specifically about Mean Girls just because it fits within what I want to talk about. But it's absolutely true that we see mean boys. All right. So what I want to talk about, though, is how society creates these systems. Kiana said it started with slavery. Absolutely. We can go back to the field hands and those in the house and colorism and just all of that kind of stuff. That's absolutely true. But when we come back even to where we are now, society is so visually centered that it creates a system where people are identified, again, by the way they look. They're identified by the way they act, by the way they dress. And so when I saw Mean Girls, I was like, wow, I see that every day among grown women, right? Not just among high school students. Not just among middle school students where you think all of those little petty kinds of things happen, but how many of you as women have walked into, let's just say, we won't even talk about church yet. How many of you have walked into a room thinking that you were fine, thinking that you showed up just looking good, and then you saw the way other people looked at you, or you looked at other people and started to think, maybe I don't look as good. Anybody besides me? Anybody besides me walk into a room and it completely dashed my self-esteem because you saw the pretty girls with the pretty girls, right? The trendy girls with the trendy girls. And in that room, and that, that's where I find it the most. That's when you can really tell. You're trying to figure out what group I fit into. Who is going to accept me into their group? And I'll tell you, I'll just be honest and be real. I'm an introvert. And so those kinds of rooms absolutely, positively are not fun for me because I'm automatically trying to survey the room and decide who is going to accept me into their group. Well, can I tell you, that's the analogy that happens with life. We go to work, we go to church, and we're trying to figure out who is my tribe. Adelia says, been there. Like, I think I dressed for the wrong occasion. Absolutely. But we go to these places thinking to ourselves, who's my tribe? Who is it that, not only who is it that I belong to, but who's going to accept me? And unfortunately, if we're not cognizant and disrupting that status quo, we'll find ourselves having low self-esteem. We'll find ourselves sizing up other women ourselves. Because can we also be real? There absolutely have been times that I've walked in a room and because of the way somebody looked or because of the way somebody dressed, I sized them up and thought, oh, I don't fit with them. Oh, I'm not going to like them. They're not going to have anything to say, right? We size up intelligence. I've done it. Oh, I'm not going to have anything in common with her. That is the enemy. And that's what we see in this movie, Mean Girls. All right. Now, I'm not going to be able to get through all of this, but I want to start it, and we're going to start next week. I need you all to tell your girlfriends to get in here because next week it's going to be even better, right? Let somebody know what we're talking about. All right. So when we think about this idea of Mean Girls, right? And my objective tonight is really simple. I want us to identify those things that can make us mean, right? I want to identify this system that creates mean girls, and we want to dismantle it. We want to find tools for how we can stop it because we are better together. In this particular movie, again, I love it. The one I saw stars Lindsay Lohan. I think there's a show on Broadway now. It's a Mean Girls show. But this particular movie with Lindsay Lohan, she actually lives in Africa, had lived in Africa with her father and mother who were missionaries. So she didn't know anything about American society. She didn't know anything about cliques. She didn't know anything about how stuff sort of operated. She leaves Africa and comes to America to public high school. Now, she's been homeschooled pretty much all her life. She's been in Africa all of her life. And now she comes to this public high school and she has to maneuver relationships, right? And I'll tell you, for some of us, we might as well have grown up in a whole other culture. We might as well have not known the rules because the reality is there are rules that we live by every day. Many of them are just unspoken. So nobody tells us that pretty girls only stay with pretty girls. It just becomes part of what happens in society. So she gets to this high school and she meets two groups of people. And I'll say this, every culture has those people who are on top and those people who are at the bottom. And you're going to see this. You're going to inbox me tomorrow and say, Dr. Wilbin, the stuff you were talking about, I saw it at my job or I saw it at church. And I will say this movie is based on a book called Queen Bees and Wannabes. Queen Bees and Wannabes. So if you're the mother of a daughter who is going to be in middle school or high school, look that book up because it's really, really good. Queen Bees and Wannabes. So anyway, Lindsay Lohan's the character. She leaves Africa. She comes to high school. This is really good. True. You observe and learn the culture before you move. Absolutely. She gets to the high school. She meets the kids who are on the bottom, a boy and a girl. Can't remember their names offhand, but her name is Katie. And, this girl is pretty. They try to reel her in. Okay. They try to reel her in and befriend her. Now, the thing is, she goes into this school and again, she's trying to find her group. She's trying to find her tribe. She meets them and then they see this other group. And of course, when the other group comes in, there's a girl, blonde, beautiful in terms of society standards. There's two girls who are kind of walking a little bit beside her, behind her. It's clear that this blonde is the queen bee. It's clear that the people next to her are the sidekicks. Long story short, Katie, finds out from the people at the bottom who these girls are. Everybody looks up to them. They wear something. Everybody else wants to wear it. They do something. Everybody else wants to do it. And because Katie is attractive and can be a mean girl, they devise this plan. The people on the bottom say, You go pretend to be a mean girl and come back and tell us everything that's going on. Now, the reality is the people at the bottom talked about the mean girls, but guess what? They really wanted to be accepted by them as well. They talked about what they wore. They talked about what they did. But they got a lot of pleasure when Katie would come back and describe everything that was happening with the mean girls. And if we're honest, again, thank you, Shuglavia, you know, because you've been watching it. Damien and Janice. But Damien and Janice really wanted to know what was happening with the mean girls because there's something in us that wants to be accepted. Can I just share with somebody watching, it is okay. It is okay for us to want to be accepted. Let me say that again, because sometimes we feel bad or we're made to feel bad because we want to be accepted by certain groups. That is an innate part of us. We're born to need and want community. So when it feels like somebody is rejecting us, that feels bad. That hurts. And I can probably attest for all of us who are watching or who will watch this later, we've been rejected before. I know I have. I've been rejected by groups that I really thought that I wanted to be a part of. And I really believe that was happening with Damien and Janice, those at the bottom. They didn't like the fact that these mean girls wouldn't give them the time of day, didn't like them, didn't want to be with them. And I just want to speak that to somebody because that's been your testimony. You are the misunderstood, as Adelia talked about earlier. You are the one that always feels like you have to be alone because people don't get you. You're the one who is not invited to parties. Or when you were younger, you weren't that one that everybody invites to parties. I've been there. You're the one who had parties and people didn't come, or you heard about what other people were doing and you're not getting the call to go to dinner. And I want to share that because when we become adults, we sometimes push that stuff down as if it doesn't hurt anymore. Quenisha said, yes, I have. Shaquavia said, it hurts very bad. It hurts really bad. Adelia says it leaves you questioning what's wrong with you. Absolutely. But what I want to teach today and what I want to impart into us is that though it's human nature for us to long for acceptance, once we discovered that according to scripture, we are accepted in the beloved, it doesn't take that natural pain away. But I do believe it can shift something in us so that we can start breaking some of these systems that allow for people to feel left out. All right. So that not only are you not feeling left out, but you're the one that brings people in. I felt that in my shondo. All right. Adelia said it definitely can make you be on guard to a fault. Yes. And internalize, right? What's wrong with me? Why don't people like me? I've been there. And I'm not talking about when I was in high school. I've been there as an adult. Absolutely. So what happens with this movie, and I'm not going to go into all of it. Watch it if you haven't watched it. It's good. But Katie, and this is what I want us to hear, Katie starts hanging with the mean girls, and the girls that are following her is called the plastics. They're called the plastics because they have no feelings. They have no thoughts of their own. Whatever the queen bee says, they do. She says, we're wearing pink tomorrow, they wear pink. If she says we're wearing skirts tomorrow, they wear a certain sort of skirt. So they're called the plastics. Katie, who wasn't involved in this society, Katie, who knew nothing about these groups, Katie, who comes in and starts to learn about these plastics, because people start looking at her, because people start wanting to be like her, because people start wanting to dress like her, Katie becomes the queen bee. A whole host of other things happen, but essentially things shifts, and Katie finds herself being mean. Katie finds herself acting the same way that the people she had once talked about acted. And what I want to say, and then I'm going to give you a couple of points, and then we're going to wrap it up for tonight. Don't be so arrogant to think that you can't be the mean girl. Yes, thank you, Shaquavia. That's a really good point. They were called the plastics too, because they were only concerned about artificial things. They only cared about dress and image and the way they looked, right? But what I love about that revelation, this idea that Katie actually became a mean girl, that she wasn't born into the system, but the system brought her in. She wasn't born wanting to be part of this mean girl system, but once she learned it and became a part of it, she could act it out as if it were her second nature. The reason I really wanted to do this as the first Disrupt Her series is because we have to recognize our own behavior and make sure that we've not become the mean girl too. Don't be so arrogant to think that we can't be the mean girl, because the reality is, relative to somebody else, even if you weren't invited to one group, you're part of a group that somebody else wants to be in. I'm talking about disrupting systems, right? Talking about disrupting systems. You might look towards a group of people and say, God, man, I would love to know them. I would love to be a part of that group. But somebody else is looking at you saying, I wish I could know her better. And what I believe the enemy does is he creates these little boxes. He creates these little boxes that, if we're not careful, will be used to separate us from our sisters. All right? But the reality is, we have to make sure that we're disrupting our own thoughts. Listen, I'm teaching better than y'all amening. No, y'all amening good. Yes, Joanna said, prayer point, Lord, help me not to succumb to the system and be a mean girl. And that has to be all of our prayers, because again, I keep saying the reality is, but I want to reiterate this point. There is something that you and I can do to stop the system where we are. Katie got caught up in it. She became a mean girl. And this is the other thing that happens at the end of this movie. If you've never seen it, there's a scene where there are all of these things said about these various people and about all the kids at school. And the principal starts asking questions, or a teacher starts asking questions. How many of you have ever felt unloved? Everybody raise their hand. How many of you have ever felt, that people didn't like you? Everybody raise their hand. And what I want to share with all of us, for those of us who have felt, like we're at the bottom, we're Janice and Damien. For those of us who have felt excluded, for all of us who have felt like, we can't be a part of that group that everybody loves and wants to be near and wants to be with, there are other people who have been in the same position. There's my sister Carla. Good to see you, sis. All of us have been in the same position. And what we find is even the queen bee in this movie has her own insecurities. She's dieting and trying to lose weight, even though it didn't seem like she had any, to fit into a certain dress because she wanted to look a certain way. She had her own security. So what I want to do through this series over the next couple of weeks is do what Carla said. I want us to disrupt our own thoughts. I want us to disrupt the system. Yes, listen, Shaquavia asked a question. I'll pose that to the group. How many of you have ever felt personally victim? Oh yeah, that was the question. And so I'm going to pose this to the group. The question in the Mean Girls movie was, how many of you ever felt personally victimized by Regina George? That's the queen bee. So let me pause and ask the question of the group, because I'm going quickly. How many of you on this live right now have ever felt victimized by somebody that you would consider to be a queen bee? And when I say victimized, I just mean, talked about, excluded, dismissed, not part of. How many of you all have ever been victimized by someone you would consider to be a queen bee? And if that's you, how did that make you feel? Have you ever been victimized, and how did that make you feel? And as you're typing, I could definitely think about, I'll give you a really good example. As you're thinking, how many of you have been victimized, and how many, how did it make you feel? All right, Carla said, I'm experiencing that now. I will tell you, I went to a women's event, and this women's event had a number of different women, number of different ministers, and all of us, were at varying levels in terms of, some people were pastors, some people were in the marketplace, but all of us were preachers. All of us were ministers, and there were a number of women. And this has happened more than once, but this one experience really, really impacted me. And I'm not talking about 10 years ago. I'm not talking about 5 years ago. I'm talking about relatively recently. I will tell you, I'm a different kind of girl, right? I am not going to be the one who walks in and I'm the most trendy. I already know that about myself. I don't walk in and I'm the most bubbly. I already know that about myself. I already walk in and I know that I'm not the most likable. Okay. Now, I'm not saying that people don't like me, but I'm not that person that's just that, going to invite everybody to me. Women like that. That's my sister. My sister, Sean, she's very much like that. She doesn't meet a stranger. Everybody likes her. Everybody knows her. People tell me that, they think I'm mean until they get to know me. And then they're like, oh my gosh, you're really nice. Okay. But this is what I want to share. I get into this and I tried to get myself together. Like, I tried to tell myself what this experience was going to be like in a room full of women. I tried to dispel stereotypes. Okay, I'm still talking about this mean girl effect. I tried to tell myself, oh, it's going to be great. We're all here for the same purpose. When I tell you, I felt the most uncomfortable that I have felt probably since I was in high school. Because I went with the perspective, which is my mantra, which is who I am, that we're better together, that we're going to learn each other, that, there was going to be all of these awesome collaborations and we're going to vibe off of each other and iron is going to sharpen iron. And that wasn't my experience. And I met some great people during this particular ministry event. But the reality of my experience was there were lots of people who looked a certain way. I didn't fit that mold. There were lots of red bottoms and bundles. Ain't nothing wrong with it, because I got some bundles and I'm looking for some red bottoms. So there's nothing wrong with red bottoms and bundles. But when we talk about plastics and we talk about being artificial, I wasn't there for that purpose. So I wasn't, all dolled up like that. And I remember feeling for a while, so insecure, because I was like, God, I don't fit this. Like, there are things that I don't have conversations about. I'm not that person that's going to be drawn to your Louis Vuitton bag, because I want a Louis Vuitton. I like Louis Vuitton, but that's just not something that attracts me. And my point in saying that is there were some amazing women, beautiful women, but there weren't enough disruptors, in my humble opinion, because disruptors would have shifted the atmosphere and everybody would have felt welcomed. Disruptors would have seen the people, and this is what I want you all to hear me from my heart. All right. Disruptors would have, y'all, red bottoms and bundles. Disruptors would have seen the least likely person in the room to get attention and bring that person over. That's what I want to impart in us. And I believe if there is a system of DisruptHers among us, we're going to shift every atmosphere that we come into. We're going to shift every system. Adelia said, how did it make me feel? It made me feel as though, why are you making so hard to be nice to you? And I found myself being intentionally nasty toward her. That's not how I should have responded. Been there. Because I'm going to get you before you get me. I'm going to get you before you get me. Been there. Carla said it made me kind of take a second look at myself. 100%. Like, something wrong with me? Shuavia says, Adelia, yes. Why are you making it so hard for me to be nice to you? Yes, been there. Absolutely. Adelia says, oh my gosh, that's me. I'm not into that stuff. But what book are you reading? I'm good at one-on-one conversations, like deep conversations. All that fluff, I have a hard time with. Sometimes I'm like, should I care about red bottoms and bundles? Goodness, that's funny. And listen, I want them. Y'all gonna see me soon because I got some bundles that I'm about to wear. Y'all know I wear my hair differently all the time. But I think the point to be made is I want everybody in the room to feel special. I want everybody in the room to feel like they're a queen bee. All right. I want everybody in the room to feel like they're a part of what we're doing. And if we as women don't shift the system, because what society tells us, and this is a male-dominated society, let me be very clear, right? Unfortunately, we buy into it and we live it, but it's a very male-dominated society. You got to look a certain way. You have to be a certain shape, right? You have to care about certain things. And if you don't, you're not part of the in group. Maddie, I'm so glad. This is good. This is good for me. I want us all to be disruptive in our red bottoms. I want us to be disruptors with our bundles. I want us to look at, this is my challenge to you all. And then I promise I'm going to give you a couple of points, and because I haven't even gotten into my teaching. But I want to give us a couple of points and then we're going to pick up next Monday. But my challenge to you, even if though we're socially distancing and we're physically separate, my challenge to you is to find the person who is least likely to be among the queen bees and impart into her. That person who's the most insecure, that person whose name never gets called. I want you to intentionally do something to recognize her, to lift her up, so that she can disrupt her own thoughts. All right. Joanna says, that's normally how I am. I want everyone to be included. That's good. That's the way we want to be. All right. In our red bottoms. Okay. With our bundles, with our Louis Vuitton, with our whatever floats your boat. Do all of that. And you can be fly doing it. Carla said, I need to be more intentional on being a disruptor. Yes. Carla, that's what Dr. Matisse is here for. She's going to get us together and we're going to change the world in our red bottoms and bundles. You better believe it. We are going to be a group of women who are, we're stopping this societal stupidness. It's silly. And we're going to come together and change the world. All right, let me give you a couple of points. And then I got 3 points. I'm probably not going to be able to get to all of them. I'm going to do point 1 and then we'll pick up next time and I'll do points 2 and 3. But my real objective, and I mean this from, if anybody knows me, and everybody on here does, at least through my teachings on Facebook, I love to empower women. I love who God has created us to be. So when I see those systems where the enemy pits us against one another, I call it out. And that's what we're doing tonight. And I'll tell you another very, very quick story. And then I'm going to tell you what this point 1 is. But I remember last year, there was a particular woman um, who very opposite from me externally. So she is very trendy. She's very, very beautiful. She is what society would want to look at and see. And I found myself, if I'm honest, because that mean girl spirit, jealousy is part of the thing that fuels it. Okay, I'm gonna be real with you guys. Jealousy is part of the thing that fuels it. So the queen bees are not there by themselves. They're there because we put them there. Wannabes and others who can't quite get there are not there by themselves, right? Jealousy holds us in position. We can't be free from where society puts us when it's rooted in jealousy. And I'll be honest, I didn't think about it as jealousy, but I remember people would talk about this particular woman, and she's in ministry and she does a lot of great things. And I remember at first I was like, because in my mind I'm thinking, oh, she can't be too spiritual because she's so externally, got all this stuff going on externally. She can't be too spiritual. And the more I heard people talking about her, the more jealousy started taking root in me, because it triggered. Y'all want me to be real tonight? I'm just gonna be real, because this is my broadcast. The more people talked about her, the more jealous I became, and I didn't realize it as a root of jealousy. I thought it was protecting the integrity of ministry, right? You can't look this way, or you can't do that and really do ministry well. That was my justification for my jealousy. That was what hid my jealousy. And so every time somebody talked about this particular woman, I had that feeling, because what it triggered was queen bees and wannabes. She's the pretty queen bee, right? And I was taken back to that high school point where, they called me smart. Yeah, I did this, and that. But really, I want to be the pretty one. I want to be the trendy one. I want to be the one that everybody looks at. It triggered that for me. And so again, and particularly let me be real. Can I be real with my sisters? Particularly when men said it. We're talking about disrupting. I'm disrupting my own thoughts. I'm going to disrupt her. When men especially said things about her, it made me even more angry. It made me even more jealous. Because if you're saying that about her and I don't look like her, what does that mean about me? Right? And I'm married. So it wasn't an issue of me liking the guys or anything like that. But it just triggered and reminded me of high school. It reminded me of how I felt before. And so God spoke to my spirit, and I'm telling you, it was as plain as day. God showed me myself, and he said, he showed me my jealousy. And he said, the reason you don't like her is because they're saying things that's pitting you against her. And I didn't even realize it. Because the more they talked about her and they saw my anger, the more they said it. So here, what God showed me was this system where the enemy was content to pit me against my sister so that we could never get together. Because the more jealous of her I was, the more mad I was when other people would talk about her, the less likely it would be that we would get together. So from that moment on, you know what I did to disrupt my own thoughts? I spoke well of her. I'm helping somebody tonight because I'm helping myself. I spoke well of her. And every time these same guys said something to get a rise out of me, I would not let it impact me at all. And in fact, I shifted my entire language. Whereas before my language was negative toward her and what she did, my language shifted because God was changing my mind. I was like, oh no, God uses her. What am I trying to say to all of us? Don't be so arrogant to think that you can't be the mean girl. You don't have to be a queen bee to be a mean girl. You can be right where you are and have an idea formed about somebody else and not even know that person. Adelia says, what I love about God is that he'll show us ourselves without exposing us. He gives us a chance to get ourselves together. And that's exactly what he did. And to Adelia's point, that woman never even knew it. She doesn't even know it to this day. God fixed my heart. And I'm so grateful that he showed me the mean girl that I was able to identify in everybody else except myself. But when God showed me the mean girl in me, he started softening my own heart towards other women. Carla said, helping us on tonight. Shaquavia said, that's good. Joanna said, that's good. Let me give you these couple of points, and then we're going to wrap this up. I need y'all to share this. I need y'all to tell somebody we're doing some work tonight. And I promise I'm about to end. I promise I'm about to end. I'm just going to give this one point, and then it's over. When we start to recognize the mean girl around us, the system that creates mean girls, and the mean girls in us, that's when we're going to start to disrupt systems. Let me say that again. When we start to recognize systems that create mean girls, when we start to identify the mean girls around us, and when we start to recognize the mean girls in us, that's when we can start to disrupt systems. The reality is we've all been there. Even if you're a queen bee, there's always somebody higher, right? There's always somebody else that you can aspire to. And even if you're a queen bee, the reality is you have insecurities. You have things that you don't like about yourself. You have things that sometimes take you even back to your childhood. Well, tonight and next Monday, I want to identify those things, and we are going to shift them. We're going to shift our thinking, and we're going to create such a pattern and a habit in our own minds that meanness can't even happen around us. We're going to be the ones picking out the person who looks like they're the most uncomfortable, and we're going to show them the most love. We're going to stop our own thoughts from keeping us from our sisters, and we're going to be the ones who bring everybody together. Because I promise you, when we get this in our spirit, the world is not going to know what hit them. We're changing systems, sisters. And it's not just in the church. It's in every system that we're a part of. It's at our jobs. It's in our homes. Everywhere our feet tread, I should say, we're going to shift systems, and we're leaving it changed for the better. Listen, I want to end in prayers. I always do. I've got more for you next Monday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But let us end in prayer. God of mercy and of grace, we love you so much. I thank you for every single sister who is on this live and everyone who will come and watch this replay. God, we know you put this in our spirits. We've been dealing with some challenging things. We've been the queen bee. We've been the wannabe. We've been the people, God, on top, still with insecurities. And we've been the people on the bottom, God, wanting to be a part of something bigger than ourselves. Well, thank you, God, that you're telling us tonight that we are part of a sisterhood that cannot be shaken. We are building something, God, that's even greater than ourselves. God, you are making us over in our minds. You're making us over in our families. You're making us over, God, so that we can dismantle the old as you're bringing the new. I pray for every single sister, God, who is represented tonight, every single sister who will watch this replay. I pray that you bless them. I pray, oh God, that you touch them. I pray, oh God, that you change their minds. And as you do that, God, as you change everything around them for the better, we'll give your name honor, glory, and praise. Lord, we love you and we thank you in Jesus' name. Amen. Listen, sis, I'm so glad you joined me tonight. Thank you. Go tell somebody we're doing something different on YouTube. We're empowering some people. We're creating some wonderful sisterhoods, and we're about to shake some stuff up. I can't wait to see you this time next week, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on YouTube. See you next time. Bye.